On my wedding day, I stood draped in white, hands trembling beneath lace that had taken months to embroider. In the clearing where generations had sealed their bonds under moonlight, I waited for the Alpha's son to claim me as his Luna. 5 years of courtship, of proving my worth as the pack's healer despite my outsider status, all culminating in this moment of acceptance. Instead, I received humiliation. Before the entire pack, he lowered his gaze and rejected me for another. The whispers rose like a tide around me. Orphan girl, no bloodline, unworthy. As I stood frozen in my shame, the ceremonial flowers in my hair suddenly a crown of thorns. But in the silence that followed, a different voice cut through the night. Deep, commanding, absolute. The Alpha King himself stepped forward from the shadows, his mere presence causing wolves twice my age to bow their heads. The ruler who commanded territories, whose name was whispered in fear and reverence, took my trembling hand in his. "If he will not have you," he declared, eyes never leaving mine, "then I claim you as my queen." His words sealed a fate I never sought. Now, bound to the most dangerous wolf in the Northern Territories, I must navigate a royal court that despises me, uncover the truth behind his unexpected claim, and confront the terrifying possibility that in the Alpha King's cold, calculating eyes, I might find something I've never known, a place to belong. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The day I was supposed to become Luna dawned clear and bright, mocking the storm that would soon erupt in my life. I stood before the ornate mirror in the preparation chamber, surrounded by women who had never truly accepted me into their fold. Their smiles were as false as their compliments, while they fussed over my wedding gown. "You look beautiful, Olivia," said Elder Mara, the oldest wolf in our pack, her wrinkled hands smoothing down the delicate lace of my veil. Who would have thought the orphan girl with no lineage would one day become our Luna? I forced a smile, swallowing the hurt her words caused. 5 years in the Silver Moon pack, and still, they introduced me as the orphan. Never mind that I had earned my place as head healer, that I had saved countless lives with herbs and remedies that other packs now sought. To them, I would always be an outsider. "Thank you," I replied, my voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in my stomach. Theo sees beyond titles and bloodlines. That's why I love him. Theo, the Alpha's son. Handsome, kind Theo, who had courted me despite his father's obvious disapproval. Today, we would be bound together before the entire pack, and finally, I would belong. The ceremonial drums began outside, their rhythm matching my racing heartbeat. "It's time," Elder Mara announced, and the women formed a procession around me. The walk from the preparation chamber to the sacred clearing was the longest of my life. Pack members lined the path, their expressions ranging from genuine happiness to poorly concealed disdain. I kept my head high, focusing on the thought of Theo waiting for me beneath the ancient oak tree where all pack unions were blessed. When I reached the clearing, my steps faltered. Theo stood beneath the oak, but something was wrong. His shoulders were rigid, his face pale. Beside him, his father, Alpha Magnus, wore an expression of cold triumph that sent a chill down my spine. I continued forward, each step heavier than the last, until I stood before them. Theo wouldn't meet my eyes. "We gather tonight under the full moon," the pack shaman began, his voice carrying across the hushed clearing, "to witness the union of Theodore, son of Alpha Magnus, and Olivia, healer of the Silver Moon pack." The ritual words continued, but I barely heard them. Something was very wrong. Theo's scent had changed. No longer the comforting pine and warmth I had come to associate with him, but sharp with anxiety and shame. When the time came for him to speak the binding words, Theo finally looked at me. His blue eyes, usually so warm, were cold with resolve. "I cannot complete this union," he said, his voice carrying in the stunned silence. The world around me seemed to freeze. Whispers erupted like hissing snakes. "Theo," my voice sounded small, foreign to my own ears. "I've made a mistake," he said, his voice gaining strength as he turned to address the pack. "I believed I could choose my mate against the will of the moon, but I was wrong. Last night, I found my true mate." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. My hands began to shake, and I clenched them tightly to hide my distress. "Who?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. A slender figure stepped forward from the crowd. Elena, daughter of the pack's wealthiest family. Beautiful, pure-blooded Elena, with her perfect lineage and political connections that would strengthen the Silver Moon Pack. "It happened yesterday," Elena said, her voice sugar-sweet with false sympathy. "We touched hands while planning the ceremony, and the mate bond formed instantly. It was undeniable. I stood there, draped in white, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses to my humiliation. The ceremonial flowers in my hair suddenly felt like a crown of thorns. 5 years of building a life, of earning respect through my work, of loving a man who had promised to stand by me, all of it crumbling to dust. "I see," I said, struggling to maintain my dignity. "How fortunate for you both to discover this before the binding." Alpha Magnus stepped forward, barely concealing his satisfaction. "The ceremony is cancelled," he announced. "Our pack will celebrate a different union soon enough, one ordained by the moon goddess herself." The finality in his voice was clear. I was dismissed, forgotten, an inconvenience now removed. I turned to leave, my vision blurring with unshed tears, when a new voice cut through the chaos. "Stop!" The single word resonated with power, causing every wolf present to freeze instinctively. The command was laced with an authority that could not be questioned, the voice of an alpha, but not just any alpha. Through the parting crowd strode a figure that caused even Magnus to straighten with respect and fear, tall and imposing, with shoulders that carried the burden of ruling the entire northern territories. King Darius of the Shadow Crest pack approached the ceremonial space. The Alpha King, ruler of all packs in the region, including ours. A man whose presence at a pack ceremony was unprecedented. His dark gaze swept over the scene. Me in my wedding dress, Theo and Elena standing close together. Alpha Magnus rigid with shock. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" Magnus finally managed to ask. King Darius ignored him completely, his intense eyes fixed on me. I had never stood this close to him before. In the few times he had visited our pack, he had been a distant, forbidding figure, someone to be glimpsed from afar, but never approached. Now, I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the faint scar running through his right eyebrow, the hard line of his jaw covered with a neatly trimmed beard. "You are the healer," he said. Not a question. I nodded, unable to find my voice. The one who created the treatment for silver poisoning that saved 23 of my warriors last winter. Again, I nodded, surprised he knew of my work. "Your name is Olivia." "Yes, Your Majesty," I finally managed to say. A muscle in his jaw twitched as his gaze shifted to Theo, who seemed to shrink under his scrutiny. "You reject this woman as your mate?" the king asked, his voice deceptively soft. Theo swallowed visibly. I found my true mate, Your Majesty. The moon goddess." "Convenient timing," the king cut him off. "The night before your wedding." No one dared speak as the Alpha King turned back to me, his expression unreadable. "The son has proven himself a fool," he said, his voice carrying across the clearing. "But the father has raised a greater one." Without warning, he reached for my hand. The moment his skin touched mine, a shock ran through my body. Not the calm recognition of a mate bond, but something else entirely. Something powerful and terrifying and exhilarating. "If he will not have you," King Darius announced, his eyes never leaving mine, "then I claim you as my queen." The collective gasp from the pack was like a gust of wind through the trees. Alpha Magnus stepped forward, his face pale with shock. "Your Majesty, surely you jest. Do I look like a man who makes jokes, Magnus?" The king's voice was deadly quiet. "No, but this woman, she has no bloodline, no status. She's an orphan from outside our territories." King Darius's grip on my hand tightened, not painfully but possessively. "This woman saved the lives of my elite guard with her knowledge and skill when your own healers failed. She has proven her worth while your son has proven his weakness." His eyes narrowed. "Unless you wish to challenge my decision." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. No wolf, not even an alpha, could challenge the Alpha King and survive. Magnus immediately lowered his gaze. "Of course not, Your Majesty." "Good." King Darius turned to the shaman, who looked as though he might faint. "Continue the ceremony." "But," the old man stammered. "Did I stutter?" the king asked coldly. The shaman quickly shook his head and raised his trembling hands. We gather tonight to witness the union of King Darius of the Shadow Crest Pack and Olivia, healer of the Silver Moon Pack." I stood frozen in disbelief as the ceremonial words continued, my mind struggling to process what was happening. This morning, I had been preparing to marry a man I thought loved me. Now, I was being claimed by the most powerful and feared werewolf in the Northern Territories, a man I had never even spoken to before today. When the time came for our response, King Darius spoke his part without hesitation, his deep voice resonating with certainty. Then all eyes turned to me, waiting. In that moment, I saw my future stretching before me in two directions. I could refuse, humiliate myself further, and return to being the pack outcast, eventually forced to leave as Theo and Elena rose to leadership. Or I could accept, become queen to a man I didn't know, feared by many, respected by all. I looked up into the king's eyes, searching for some clue to his motivations. I found none, only a steady intensity that seemed to look straight through me. I accept, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. The shaman completed the ceremony, binding us together in the eyes of the pack and the moon goddess. As tradition dictated, King Darius leaned down to seal our union with a kiss. His lips were surprisingly gentle against mine, but there was nothing soft about the arm that wrapped around my waist, pulling me firmly against him. My queen, he murmured against my lips, loud enough for those closest to hear. When we turned to face the pack, the expressions that greeted us ranged from shock to fear to outright hostility. Theo looked stunned, Elena calculating, and Alpha Magnus, furious beneath his forced mask of acceptance. We leave for Shadow Crest immediately, the king announced. I suggest you all remember that your new queen carries my protection. Any disrespect to her is disrespect to me. His voice dropped to a dangerous rumble. And I do not tolerate disrespect. As he led me away from the clearing, away from the life I had built, and the man who had betrayed me, one thought crystallized in my mind. I had just been claimed by a man who wanted me for reasons I couldn't begin to understand, a man known for his ruthlessness and power. I had escaped one trap only to walk willingly into another, potentially far more dangerous one, and I had no idea what awaited me as queen of the Shadow Crest pack. The journey to Shadow Crest took 3 days through dense forest and rugged mountain terrain. King Darius's personal guard surrounded us, their expressions stoic, and their eyes constantly scanning for threats. I rode in silence beside my new husband, still wearing my wedding dress beneath a heavy cloak he had provided. We'll be within sight of the palace by nightfall, he said, breaking a silence that had stretched for hours. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The man had barely spoken 10 sentences to me since claiming me at the ceremony. Each night, he had assigned female guards to attend to me in a separate tent, keeping a respectful distance. This puzzled me almost as much as his unexpected claim had. Your dress will be unsuitable for the mountain climate, he continued. My sister has arranged for appropriate clothing upon our arrival. You have a sister? I asked, seizing the opportunity to learn something about the man I was now bound to. His jaw tightened. Yes, Lyra. When he offered nothing more, I gathered my courage. May I ask you something, Your Majesty? Darius, he corrected. And yes. Why did you claim me? The truth, please. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Your silver poisoning treatment. It's unprecedented. When I discovered you created it, I had you investigated. My heart stuttered. Investigated? I make it my business to know extraordinary people within my territories, Olivia, especially when they save the lives of my warriors. So you claimed me for my healing abilities? The concept was hardly romantic, but at least it made some sense. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. That was part of it. And the other part? His eyes darkened. The timing was convenient for my purposes. Before I could press further, he raised his hand, signaling silence. The guards immediately tensed, hands moving to their weapons. Then I heard it, the subtle rustling in the undergrowth that indicated we weren't alone. Rogues, Darius said quietly. Stay close to me. The attack came swiftly. 5 massive wolves bursting from the forest, their matted fur and wild eyes marking them as wolves without a pack. Rogues were dangerous, driven by desperation, and untethered to any laws or alpha's control. The guards transformed instantly, their bones cracking and reforming as they shifted into their wolf forms. Darius remained human, pulling me against him protectively while drawing a wicked-looking blade with his free hand. Stay behind me, he ordered, but I was already moving. One of the rogues had taken down a guard, its jaws clamped around the wolf's throat. Without thinking, I grabbed a fallen branch and struck the rogue hard across the muzzle. The creature released the guard with a yelp of pain, turning its rage toward me. I froze as the rogue lunged. Time seemed to slow as I watched death approach in the form of yellowed fangs and rabid eyes. Then a massive black blur intercepted the rogue mid-leap. Darius, now in wolf form, was the largest wolf I had ever seen. His midnight fur rippled over muscles that spoke of immense power, and his jaws closed around the rogue's throat with deadly precision. One sharp twist, and the rogue went limp. Darius dropped the body and turned to the remaining attackers, his growl so deep it vibrated through the ground beneath my feet. The surviving rogues hesitated, then fled back into the forest. Darius shifted back to human form, unconcerned with his nudity as he strode toward me. I had never seen a transformation so fluid, so controlled. Most wolves required at least moments of recovery after shifting, but he seemed unaffected. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his hands gripping my shoulders as his eyes searched me for injuries. "No, What were you thinking?" His voice was low but intense. "You could have been killed. Your guard was dying," I said, meeting his gaze. "I'm a healer. I help people. It's what I do." Something flashed in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. He released me and turned to the injured guard who had shifted back to human form, clutching his torn throat. I knelt beside the wounded man, examining the damage. The artery was missed, but he's losing blood quickly. I need my supplies. One of the female guards brought my healer's bag, which Darius had insisted be packed when we left the Silver Moon territory. Working quickly, I cleaned the wound and applied a poultice of yarrow and comfrey to stop the bleeding. "This will prevent infection," I explained as I worked, aware of Darius watching intently. "But he needs rest and proper care. The wound is deep. We're only 2 hours from Shadow Crest," Darius said. "Can he make it?" I assessed the guard's condition. "Yes, but he shouldn't shift again until the wound has begun to heal properly. The transformation could reopen it." Darius nodded and gave orders for a makeshift stretcher. As the guards prepared to continue our journey, he touched my shoulder lightly. "You were brave," he said quietly. "Foolish, but brave." I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a criticism, but I sensed it was the most approval I was likely to get. The first glimpse of Shadow Crest Palace stole my breath. Unlike the modest lodge that had housed Alpha Magnus and his family, the palace was a sprawling stone fortress built into the side of a mountain, its towers reaching toward the sky like dark fingers. Walls of black granite gleamed in the setting sun, and massive iron gates bore the symbol of the Shadow Crest Pack, a wolf howling beneath a crescent moon. The gates opened as we approached, and a contingent of guards emerged to escort us inside. I felt eyes on me from every direction, curious, assessing, judging. The new queen, brought home unexpectedly. A tall woman with Darius's dark coloring strode forward as we entered the main courtyard. Her beauty was striking, but it was the intelligence in her eyes that commanded attention. "Brother," she said, inclining her head slightly. "I see the rumors are true." "Lyra," Darius acknowledged. "This is Olivia, my queen." Lyra's piercing gaze swept over me, taking in the travel-stained wedding dress visible beneath my cloak. "Not exactly what we discussed, Darius." An undercurrent of tension flowed between the siblings, but Darius merely shrugged. "Plans change, clearly." Lyra turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to Shadow Crest, Your Majesty. I've prepared chambers for you to rest and change before the formal presentation to the pack." "Presentation?" I asked, glancing at Darius. "The pack needs to acknowledge you as their queen," he explained. "It's tradition. Tonight?" I couldn't keep the alarm from my voice. After days of travel and the rogue attack, I was exhausted. "Tomorrow," Lyra answered before Darius could speak. "The queen needs time to prepare properly." Darius frowned, but nodded. "Very well. Tomorrow evening. See that she has everything she needs." With that, he strode away, leaving me with his sister and a growing sense of unease. "This way," Lyra said, not waiting to see if I followed. She led me through corridors of polished stone, past guards who bowed their heads respectfully, and servants who watched with undisguised curiosity. The palace was a maze of hallways and chambers, all built on a scale that emphasized the power of those who dwelled within. Finally, we reached a set of ornate double doors. Lyra pushed them open to reveal a suite of rooms more luxurious than anything I had ever seen. Thick carpets covered the stone floors, and a massive four-poster bed dominated the sleeping chamber. A balcony offered a breathtaking view of the mountains, and a separate bathing room held a sunken tub large enough for 3 people. "These are the Queen's chambers," Lyra explained, "though they've been unoccupied for many years. The previous queen? Our mother. She died when Darius was 20 and I was 16. I'm sorry," I said genuinely. Lyra shrugged. "It was a long time ago. My brother has ruled alone since then. Until now." The unspoken words hung between us. "Why me?" I asked, the question that had been burning inside me since the ceremony. Lyra's expression remained carefully neutral. "That's for Darius to explain, not me." She moved to a large wardrobe and opened it to reveal dozens of gowns. "These should fit you. I took the liberty of guessing your size." Before I could thank her, a soft knock at the door preceded the entrance of 3 young women, each carrying various items: towels, oils, brushes. "Your attendants," Lyra explained. "They'll help you bathe and dress." "I can manage on my own," I said quickly, unused to such attention. Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You're the Queen of Shadow Crest now, Olivia. You need to start acting like it." With that, she departed, leaving me with the silent attendants who waited for my instructions. After a moment's hesitation, I nodded toward the bath. I suppose a bath would be nice. The hot water was blissful after days on the road, soothing muscles I hadn't even realized were aching. The attendants washed my hair with scented oils and scrubbed every inch of my travel-worn body until my skin glowed. Afterward, they dressed me in a simple but elegant gown of deep blue, brushed my hair until it shone, and served a meal that made my mouth water. Roasted venison, fresh bread, and vegetables I couldn't even name, all on plates that appeared to be actual silver. I was just finishing when another knock sounded at the door. One of the attendants opened it to reveal Darius, now dressed in clean clothing, his hair still damp from his own bath. The attendants immediately bowed and exited the room, leaving us alone. Darius remained by the door, watching me with that same intense gaze that seemed to see straight through me. "Are the accommodations satisfactory?" he asked formally. "They're beautiful," I admitted. "Far more luxurious than I'm used to." He nodded, taking a few steps into the room. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be challenging." "Challenging how?" His expression darkened. "Not everyone will welcome an outsider as queen." "Including your sister?" A fleeting smile touched his lips. "Lyra is protective of our pack. She'll come around." I stood, gathering my courage. "Darius, I need to understand what's happening. You claimed me without warning, brought me to your territory, and now expect me to face your pack as queen. Yet you've barely spoken to me. We're strangers bound by words we spoke under extraordinary circumstances." He moved closer, his movements deliberate, predatory. When he stopped before me, I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "We're bound by more than words, Olivia. We're bound by pack law, and my claim as Alpha King. That is enough for now. Enough for you, perhaps," I retorted, frustration overriding caution. "But I've been uprooted from everything I knew, thrown into a position I never sought, in a place where I know no one. I don't even know you, my supposed husband." I expected anger at my outburst. Instead, he studied me with something like curiosity. "What would you like to know?" he asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. Everything. Anything. Something that would help me understand the man I'm bound to. He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I've ruled Shadow Crest for 11 years. I united the Northern Territories after 3 decades of war between the packs. I have one sister, as you know, and no living parents. I prefer winter to summer, dawn to dusk, and rare meat to cooked." A pause. "And I claimed you because I believe you're stronger than you know." It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd shared in the 3 days since the ceremony. "Thank you," I said softly. He nodded once. "Get some rest, Olivia. Tomorrow the pack will be watching your every move, listening to your every word. They need to see a queen worthy of Shadow Crest." "And if they don't?" I asked. His eyes hardened. "They will, because I've decreed it so." With that, he turned to leave. "Aren't these your chambers too?" I blurted out, immediately regretting the question. He paused at the door, looking back at me with an unreadable expression. "The king's chambers are adjacent. The door connecting them has remained locked since my mother's death." He gestured to a door I hadn't noticed before. half hidden by a tapestry. "It will remain locked still," he added, "until you invite me to open it." Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the realization that, despite his forceful claim, King Darius intended to give me choice in at least one matter: when and if our marriage would be truly consummated. The revelation should have been comforting. Instead, it left me more confused than ever about the enigmatic man who had claimed me as his queen. I slept fitfully that night, dreams filled with rogues and wolves and Darius's penetrating gaze. When morning came, bringing with it a flurry of activity as servants prepared for the evening's presentation ceremony, one thought kept circling in my mind. What game was the Alpha King playing, and what role had I been cast in without my knowledge? Morning sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains of my chambers, casting patterns across the stone floor as I stood before a full-length mirror. 3 attendants fussed around me, arranging the elaborate gown Lyra had selected for my formal presentation to the pack. The dress was stunning, deep crimson with delicate gold embroidery depicting wolves running along the hem and sleeves. It was beautiful, regal, and completely unlike anything I had ever worn. "The red symbolizes strength," explained Mira, the eldest of my attendants. "It's traditional for a new queen's presentation." "And the gold?" I asked, watching as she fastened a heavy gold pendant around my neck. "Prosperity and continuity," she replied. "The future of the pack." The symbolism wasn't subtle. I was being dressed as a visual reminder of what a queen represented to Shadow Crest: power, wealth, legacy, all things I had never possessed. "Is there a ceremony I need to prepare for?" I asked, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "Words to memorize or traditions to follow?" The 3 women exchanged glances. "The Alpha King will present you to the pack elders first, then to the General Assembly," Mira explained. "You'll be expected to accept their acknowledgement with grace." "That sounds simple enough," I said, relief washing through me. Another silent exchange passed between the attendants. "There's also the challenge," said Kira, the youngest of the 3. "Kira," Mira hissed, shooting her a warning look. "Challenge?" I repeated, my momentary relief evaporating. "What challenge?" Mira sighed, clearly unhappy with the turn of conversation. "It's rarely invoked anymore, Your Majesty. A formality from the old days." "But what is it?" I pressed. "Any female of suitable rank may challenge the Queen's right to stand beside the Alpha King," Kira explained, ignoring Mira's glare. "If the challenge is accepted, the 2 females fight for the position." My blood ran cold. "Fight? As in, to submission typically," Mira said quickly. "Not to death, not in modern times. But yes, combat. Wolf form or human form, the challenger's choice." I stared at my reflection, suddenly seeing the crimson dress not as a symbol of strength, but of the blood that might be spilled. "Has Lyra mentioned any potential challengers?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "I see," I murmured. "And if I refuse to fight, you would forfeit your position," Mira said gently. "The pack would see it as weakness, unworthiness." "And Darius would accept this?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. The man had claimed me, brought me here, and now might stand by while I fought for a position I never asked for. "The Alpha King abides by pack law," Mira said, her tone carefully neutral. "Even he cannot interfere with the challenge, should it be invoked." A knock at the door interrupted us. Kira moved to answer it, returning with a small wooden box. "From the Alpha King," she announced, presenting it to me. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, lay a simple silver bracelet. No ornate designs, no precious stones, just a plain band of polished silver. Beneath it was a note in a bold, angular hand. "Silver can poison our blood, but this has been purified by your methods. Wear it as a reminder of your strength. D." I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist, surprised by the unexpected gesture. The silver felt cool against my skin, and I recognized the purification process as my own invention, the same treatment that had saved his warriors. "Silver?" Kira whispered, eyes wide with surprise. "But that's a powerful statement," Mira finished, nodding approvingly. "The Alpha King shows great faith in you, Your Majesty." Before I could ask what she meant, the chamber door opened again. Lyra entered, resplendent in a gown of midnight blue that emphasized her regal bearing. Her dark eyes took in my appearance with clinical precision. "The dress suits you," she said, her tone neither warm nor cold. "Are you prepared for this evening?" As prepared as I can be given the circumstances, I replied carefully, though I've just learned about the challenge. Something flickered in Lyra's expression. Irritation, perhaps, or concern. It's rarely invoked, but it could be, I pressed. Yes. She stepped closer, her voice dropping so only I could hear. And if it is, you should know that Darius's claim on you has made enemies. There are those who had expectations that have now been thwarted. By me, I realized aloud. By my brother's decision, she corrected. But yes, you are the physical representation of that decision. She studied me for a moment. Can you fight, healer? The question was direct, her gaze assessing. I've never had to, I admitted. In Silver Moon, healers were protected, kept from combat. Lyra's expression hardened. There is no such protection here. If you are challenged, you fight or you forfeit. She glanced at the silver bracelet on my wrist. My brother sees something in you. For both your sakes, I hope he's right. With that, she turned to leave, pausing at the door. The ceremony begins at sundown. I'll escort you to the great hall when it's time. After she left, I sank onto the edge of the bed, the weight of my situation pressing down on me. Your Majesty? Mira approached cautiously. Would you like me to fetch some tea to calm your nerves? I shook my head, an idea forming. No. What I need is information. Tell me about the females of high rank in this pack. Anyone who might see me as a threat or an opportunity. For the next several hours, my attendants became my instructors, briefing me on pack politics, hierarchies, and the potential rivals I might face. There was Valeria, daughter of the pack's wealthiest merchant family, who had set her sights on Darius for years. Sarah, commander of the female warriors, respected for her fighting prowess and strategic mind. And most concerning, Irina, daughter of the previous Alpha, a cousin to Darius with a claim to royal blood and a reputation for ruthlessness. Irina has been away on diplomatic duties, Mira explained, but she returned 3 days ago. Many thought she would be Darius's choice for queen. Armed with this knowledge and the sobering realization that I was woefully unprepared for a physical confrontation, I made a decision. I need to see Darius, I announced. Now, before the ceremony. The Alpha King is in council meetings all day, Mira protested. He left strict instructions not to be disturbed. Then I'll find him myself, I said, rising from the bed. Or will the queen be prevented from seeking her king? The attendants exchanged alarmed glances, but made no move to stop me as I strode from the chambers, still dressed in the ceremonial gown. Guards posted outside my door straightened as I emerged. Where is the king? I demanded, channeling every ounce of confidence I didn't feel. The Eastern Council Chamber, Your Majesty, one replied after a moment's hesitation. But he's in session with— Take me there, I interrupted. Now, the guard looked torn between following the Queen's order and respecting the king's privacy. Finally, he nodded. This way, Your Majesty. He led me through a series of corridors and down a grand staircase to a wing of the palace I hadn't yet seen. Everywhere we passed, guards and servants stopped to bow or curtsy, their eyes widening at the sight of their new queen marching purposefully through the halls. Outside a set of imposing double doors, flanked by 4 guards, my escort stopped. The Eastern Council Chamber, Your Majesty. I could hear voices from within, male voices engaged in what sounded like heated discussion. One voice rose above the others. Darius, his tone brooking no argument. Wait here, I instructed my escort, then turned to the guards at the door. Announce me. The guards looked at each other uncertainly. The Alpha King left orders not to be disturbed, one began. I'm not a disturbance, I said firmly. I'm his queen. Announce me. After a tense moment, one of the guards rapped sharply on the door and entered the chamber. I heard the low murmur of his voice, followed by a sudden silence. Then Darius's voice, clear and commanding. Send her in. The guard returned, holding the door open for me. I took a deep breath and entered the council chamber. A dozen men sat around a massive oak table, all rising to their feet as I entered. At the head of the table stood Darius, his expression a mixture of surprise and something that might have been admiration. My queen, he said, inclining his head slightly. This is unexpected. I apologize for the interruption, I said, maintaining eye contact, but I need to speak with you on an urgent matter. Darius studied me for a moment, then nodded to the men around the table. We'll reconvene after the evening ceremony. Leave us. The council members filed out silently, each bowing to me as they passed. When the last one had gone and the doors closed behind them, Darius turned to me fully. "You look every inch a queen," he said, his eyes moving over the ceremonial gown. "I'm told I might have to fight to remain one," I replied, cutting straight to the heart of my concern. "Why didn't you tell me about the challenge?" He didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Because no female has invoked it in 30 years. It's a relic of older, more barbaric times. Yet it still exists," I pointed out. "And according to my attendants, there are at least 3 females in your pack who might have reason to invoke it tonight." Darius's jaw tightened. "Who?" "Valeria, Sarah, and your cousin Irina, who apparently just returned from diplomatic duties, and who many expected would be your choice for queen." He cursed under his breath. "Irina is back? You didn't know?" I asked, suddenly suspicious. "She wasn't expected for another week." His eyes narrowed. "This changes things." "How?" I demanded. "Will you withdraw your claim? Send me back to Silver Moon in disgrace?" "No." The word was sharp, definitive. He closed the distance between us in 3 long strides. "You are my queen, Olivia. I claimed you before witnesses. That claim stands. Even if it means watching me fight a battle I'm not equipped to win?" I challenged. "You underestimate yourself," he said, surprising me. "The woman who faced down a rogue wolf to save a guard she barely knew is not without courage or resources." "Courage won't stop claws or fangs," I retorted. "I'm a healer, not a warrior." Yet you wear silver against your skin, without fear," he pointed out, his eyes dropping to the bracelet on my wrist. "Something no other wolf would dare." "Because I know how to neutralize its effects," I said. "That's science, not bravery." "Knowledge is power, Olivia, perhaps more than physical strength." He took my hands in his, an unexpected gesture that sent a jolt through me. "Tell me, why does silver poison werewolves?" The question caught me off guard. It triggers an autoimmune response. Our enhanced healing abilities turn against us, attacking our own cells because the silver disrupts the natural balance. And your treatment? It introduces compounds that bind with the silver, creating a new substance our bodies recognize as harmless, I explained, falling into the familiar comfort of scientific explanation. It gives the body time to expel the silver naturally, instead of destroying itself trying to fight it. Darius nodded, a glint of approval in his eyes. "You found a way to turn a deadly weakness into something manageable. That's the kind of thinking that saves lives and wins battles." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, beginning to understand where he was leading. "That you fight with the weapons you possess," he said simply. "Intelligence, knowledge, the unexpected." I thought of the silver bracelet he had sent me, of the message that accompanied it, a reminder of my strength, he had called it. "If Irina challenges me," I said slowly, "I can't beat her in a physical fight." "Perhaps you don't have to," he replied. "The challenge requires submission, not death or even injury. There are many paths to submission, Olivia." The intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. For the first time since he had claimed me at the ceremony, I felt a flicker of genuine connection between us, an understanding that ran deeper than words. "I need to prepare," I said, pulling my hands from his. "If the challenge comes, I won't disgrace you or myself." Something softened in his expression. "You could never disgrace me, Olivia. From the moment I learned what you had accomplished with the silver treatment, I knew you possessed a rare kind of strength. It's why I claimed you." "One of the reasons," I corrected, remembering his earlier words. "You said the timing was convenient for your purposes." A shadow passed over his face. "We all have our reasons, Olivia. Some are spoken, others held close." He stepped back, resuming the formal distance of king to queen. "Go prepare for the ceremony. Whatever happens tonight, remember that you stand as my chosen queen. That alone carries power." I recognized the dismissal and turned to leave, my mind already racing with possibilities. At the door, I paused. "Thank you for the bracelet," I said without turning around. "It was a thoughtful gift." "It wasn't a gift," he replied. "It was a reminder." As I made my way back to my chambers, escorted once more by the guard, I pondered Darius's words. Knowledge is power, perhaps more than physical strength. I was no warrior, but I was a healer, a scientist in my own right. I understood the body, its weaknesses and strengths, in ways that warriors did not. By the time I reached my chambers, a plan was forming. Risky, potentially dangerous, but better than facing a challenge unprepared. "Mira," I called as I entered the room. "I need a few items from my healer's bag, and I need them quickly." The attendant hurried to fetch the bag I had brought from Silver Moon. As she laid it on the bed, I began sorting through vials and pouches of herbs, selecting several that I set aside. "Your Majesty," she asked hesitantly, "what are you doing?" I looked up, meeting her concerned gaze with newfound determination. "Preparing to be queen," I answered, "in the only way I know how." The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold visible through my chamber windows. Soon, Lyra would come to escort me to the great hall, where the pack would be gathered to acknowledge, or challenge, their new queen. I touched the silver bracelet on my wrist, feeling its cool weight against my skin. A reminder of my strength, Darius had called it. Tonight, I would need every ounce of that strength to survive. The great hall of Shadow Crest Palace stretched before me, vast and imposing. Ancient tapestries depicting pack history adorned walls of polished black stone, and hundreds of candles in iron chandeliers cast a golden glow over the assembled crowd. Every member of the pack appeared to be present, from the highest-ranking warriors to the youngest pups, all gathered to witness the formal presentation of their new queen. I stood in an antechamber with Lyra, waiting for the ceremony to begin. She had been unusually quiet during our walk from my chambers, her expression betraying nothing of her thoughts. "Is something wrong?" I asked, unable to bear the silence any longer. Lyra's dark eyes met mine. "Irina has requested a private audience with my brother before the ceremony." My stomach tightened. "And has he granted it?" "No." A hint of surprise colored her voice. "He refused. Said that tonight was about presenting his queen to the pack, not entertaining political ambitions." Before I could respond, the massive doors to the great hall swung open. Darius stood in the entryway, resplendent in formal attire, a deep black tunic embroidered with silver thread, the Shadow Crest emblem emblazoned across his chest. The sight of him sent an unexpected flutter through me. "It's time," he said, his eyes finding mine. Lyra squeezed my arm briefly, a gesture that might have been encouragement or warning, then stepped aside. Darius extended his hand, and I moved forward to take it, feeling the warmth of his skin against my suddenly cold fingers. "Remember who you are," he murmured as he tucked my hand into the crook of his arm. "A healer who faced down rogues without flinching. My chosen queen." With those words, he led me into the great hall. A hush fell over the crowd as we entered, hundreds of eyes turning to watch our progress down the central aisle toward a raised dais where two ornate thrones awaited. I kept my chin high, my steps measured, despite the rapid beating of my heart. As we approached the dais, the pack elders stepped forward, 7 men and women of advanced age, their faces lined with wisdom and experience. Among them stood the pack shaman, a woman with silver hair and keen eyes who carried a ceremonial bowl filled with what appeared to be ash mixed with oil. Darius stopped before them, inclining his head in a show of respect. "Elders of Shadow Crest, I present to you Olivia, healer of extraordinary skill and courage, my chosen mate and your queen." The eldest stepped forward, his rheumy eyes examining me carefully. "We acknowledge your claim, Alpha King. Now we must determine if she is worthy to stand as Queen of Shadow Crest." He turned to address the assembled pack. "According to our ancient laws, any female of suitable rank may challenge the king's chosen mate if she believes herself more worthy of the position. Does anyone step forward to issue such a challenge?" My heart seemed to stop as silence stretched across the hall. Then a voice rang out from the back of the crowd. "I challenge." The crowd parted as a woman strode forward, her movements fluid and predatory. She was strikingly beautiful, with jet black hair that fell to her waist and amber eyes that gleamed with determination. She wore the ceremonial dress of a royal family member, deep purple with silver embroidery. "Irina," Darius said, his voice betraying no emotion. "On what grounds do you challenge my chosen queen?" Irina stopped at the foot of the dais, her gaze locked on me rather than Darius. "On grounds of lineage and capability. I carry the blood of Alpha Kings, while she is an outsider with no pack lineage. I am a warrior trained in diplomacy and strategy, while she is..." Her lip curled slightly. "A healer who has never known battle." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I felt Darius tense beside me, but his face remained impassive. "The challenge has been issued," the elder announced. "Olivia, as the challenged, you may accept or forfeit. If you forfeit, you relinquish your position as queen and leave Shadow Crest territory immediately." All eyes turned to me. In that moment, I felt the weight of every doubt, every fear that had plagued me since Darius claimed me. I was no warrior. I had no royal blood. By all traditional measures, Irina was right. She was more suited to stand beside the Alpha King. But then I felt the cool press of silver against my wrist, and Darius's words echoed in my mind. "Remember who you are." "I accept the challenge," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent hall. Irina's smile was predatory. "As the challenger, I choose wolf form for our combat." Another ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd. Wolf form meant greater danger, more potential for serious injury or even death. It also meant relying on instinct and raw physical power, areas where Irina, as a trained warrior, would have every advantage. "So be it," the elder declared. "The challenge will take place in the sacred circle. All will bear witness." Guards cleared the center of the great hall, revealing a circular design inlaid in the stone floor, a massive representation of the pack symbol. Darius squeezed my hand once before releasing it, his eyes conveying what his position would not allow him to say aloud. "Be careful." I stepped forward into the circle as attendants hurried to remove my ceremonial gown, leaving me in a simple shift that would allow for transformation. Across from me, Irina was similarly prepared, her confident smile never wavering. "The rules are simple," the elder announced. "Combat continues until one submits or is rendered unable to continue. Killing is forbidden, but injury is accepted as part of the challenge." He looked between us. "Are you prepared?" Irina nodded immediately. I took a deep breath, my hand moving to touch the small pouch I had concealed in my shift, my insurance policy, my only advantage. "I am prepared," I confirmed. The elder raised his staff, then brought it down sharply against the stone floor. "Begin!" Irina wasted no time. Her body contorted immediately, bones cracking and reforming as she shifted into her wolf form. Her transformation was swift and fluid, speaking to years of practice and natural ability. In seconds, a large wolf with sleek black fur stood before me, amber eyes gleaming with triumph. I closed my eyes, focusing on my own transformation. It had been months since I had shifted. Healers in Silver Moon were discouraged from taking wolf form when treating patients to avoid accidentally harming them. My shift was slower, less graceful, the sensation of bones realigning and muscles stretching almost painful after so long. When it was complete, I stood on 4 legs, my russet fur bristling as I faced my opponent. Irina was larger than me, her wolf form powerful and intimidating. Through the bond that connected all pack members, I could feel her confidence and disdain radiating toward me. She began to circle, and I mirrored her movements, keeping the same distance between us. In wolf form, communication happened on a deeper level. Instinct, emotion, intent all flowing through the pack bond. I could feel Irina's eagerness to end this quickly, to prove her superiority to the assembled pack. When she lunged, it was with blinding speed. I barely managed to dodge, feeling her teeth graze my flank as I twisted away. The crowd's collective intake of breath echoed through the hall. Irina recovered instantly, spinning to face me again, her snarl reverberating in the air. She attacked again, and this time, her teeth found purchase. Pain shot through my shoulder as she clamped down, shaking me violently before releasing and dancing away. I staggered, warm blood matting my fur. Through the pack bond, I felt her satisfaction. She was toying with me, drawing out her victory to maximize my humiliation. Irina circled again, eyes never leaving me. I knew I couldn't win this way. She was stronger, faster, more experienced in combat. With each passing moment, the gap in our abilities became more apparent to everyone watching. It was time to change tactics. I reached for the pouch concealed in the fur around my neck, secured there during my transformation. Using my teeth, I tore it open, releasing the mixture of herbs I had prepared in my chambers: wolfsbane, mountain ash, and most importantly, silver dust, treated with my neutralizing agent. To Irina and everyone watching, it appeared as though I was simply struggling to regain my footing. But as she approached for another attack, she unwittingly stepped into the scattered powder, inhaling it with her next breath. The effect wasn't immediate. It wasn't meant to be. My mixture wasn't designed to harm her, merely to weaken her gradually, to slow her reflexes just enough to give me a fighting chance. Irina lunged again, and this time I was ready. I dodged beneath her, using my smaller size to my advantage, then twisted to rake my claws across her exposed belly, not deep enough to cause serious injury, but painful enough to make her yelp in surprise. For the first time, uncertainty flickered through our bond. She hadn't expected me to land a blow. We circled each other again, and I noticed the first signs that my mixture was working, a slight hesitation in her movements, a heaviness in her breathing that hadn't been there before. The treated silver dust was disrupting her body's natural strength without causing the typical poisoning reaction, just as I had designed it to do. Irina shook her head as if to clear it, confusion bleeding into the bond. She charged again, but her movements were fractionally slower. I sidestepped and struck, my teeth finding her foreleg and clamping down hard enough to make her stumble. Through the bond, I felt her rising panic. Something was wrong with her body, and she couldn't understand what. Her attacks became more desperate, less calculated, driven by fear rather than strategy. I kept moving, conserving my energy, allowing her to tire herself further as the mixture continued to work. The crowd had fallen utterly silent, watching the unexpected turn of events with rapt attention. Finally, I saw my opening. Irina lunged, her movement sluggish enough that I could anticipate exactly where she would land. I twisted at the last moment, then drove my body into hers with all my strength, knocking her onto her side. Before she could recover, I was on her, my teeth at her throat, not breaking skin, but holding her in the classic position of dominance. Through our bond, I projected a clear message: submit. Irina struggled briefly, then went still as the reality of her situation became clear. She could not dislodge me, and with each passing moment, her strength diminished further, while the pack watched her defeat unfold. She let out a low whine, the wolf's acknowledgement of submission. I held my position a moment longer, then released her, backing away but remaining alert. Irina slowly regained her feet, her head lowered, tail tucked in the universal sign of submission. The elder stepped forward. The challenge is complete. Irina has submitted. Olivia stands as the rightful queen of Shadow Crest. A beat of silence, then the hall erupted in howls and cheers. I shifted back to human form, attendants rushing forward to drape a robe around my nakedness. Across from me, Irina did the same, her expression a mixture of confusion and humiliation as she was led away. Darius approached, his eyes gleaming with something that might have been pride. "Well done, my queen," he said, his voice pitched for my ears alone. "Though I suspect there was more to your victory than met the eye." "A healer knows the body's weaknesses," I replied softly. "Even a wolf's body." His lips curved into a rare smile. "Indeed." He turned to the elders. "Let the ceremony continue." The shaman stepped forward with the ceremonial bowl. She dipped her fingers into the mixture, then drew symbols on my forehead, my palms, and over my heart. "With these marks we acknowledge you as Queen of Shadow Crest," she intoned. "May your strength guard our pack, your wisdom guide our decisions, and your compassion heal our wounds." One by one, the pack members approached to kneel before me, pressing their foreheads to the ground in the traditional sign of fealty. Warriors who had looked at me with skepticism now showed respect. Females who had whispered behind their hands now bowed their heads in acknowledgement. When the last pack member had paid homage, Darius took my hand, leading me to the twin thrones on the dais. As I sat beside him, feeling the weight of the moment settle around me, I realized that everything had changed. I was no longer the outsider, the rejected bride, the claimed consolation prize. I had earned my place as queen through my own abilities. The celebration continued late into the night, with feasting and music and dancing. I participated as required, accepting congratulations and well wishes, though my shoulder ached from Irina's bite, and exhaustion pulled at me like an undertow. Finally, as the hour grew late, and the celebration showed no signs of abating, Darius leaned close. "You've done enough for one night," he murmured. "No one would fault you for retiring." Gratitude washed through me. "Thank you," I whispered. He escorted me from the great hall, the crowd parting respectfully as we passed. The corridors were blessedly quiet after the noise of the celebration, our footsteps echoing on stone as we made our way to the royal wing. Outside my chamber door, Darius paused. "You surprised many tonight," he said. "Including me." I surprised myself. I admitted. His eyes searched my face. What did you use on Irina? I saw you break something before she began to falter. A mixture of herbs and treated silver dust, I explained. Harmless in the long term, but it temporarily disrupts a wolf's natural strength. It was a calculated risk. I wasn't sure it would work. Yet you took that risk rather than forfeit. I couldn't disgrace you, I said simply. Or myself. Something shifted in his expression, a softening around his eyes. You could never disgrace me, Olivia. I told you that. We stood in silence for a moment, the air between us charged with unspoken thoughts. Then Darius reached out, his fingers tracing the curve of my cheek with unexpected gentleness. Rest, he said. You've earned it. He turned to leave, but I caught his hand. Darius. He looked back, a question in his eyes. Why did you really claim me? I asked. The full truth, not just the part about my healing abilities. He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, the Northern Council has been pressuring me to take a queen for years. They had arranged political matches, daughters of powerful alphas who would strengthen our alliances. Irina was their top choice, my cousin, with royal blood and appropriate training. So why not choose her, or any of their approved candidates? His jaw tightened. Because I've watched those political matches destroy packs from within. Queens chosen for bloodlines or alliances, not for their own merit. I wanted... He paused, seeming to search for the right words. I wanted someone who would stand beside me because of who they are, not whose daughter they might be. And you thought that person was me? I asked, incredulous. A healer from a minor pack, with no connections or influence. A healer who revolutionized the treatment of silver poisoning, he corrected, who saved my warriors when no one else could, who showed more innovation and courage in creating that treatment than most wolves show in a lifetime. His eyes held mine. Yes, I thought that person was you. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. But you don't know me, I pointed out. I know enough, he replied. The rest, we have time to discover. My heart beat faster at the implication in his words. That he saw a future stretching before us, one where we might grow to truly know each other. Thank you, I said softly, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. His expression softened further. That's what mates do, isn't it? See the strength in each other that we sometimes can't see in ourselves. Mates. The word hung between us, charged with meaning. We were mated by ceremony and pack law, but not yet by choice or heart. Good night, Darius, I said, suddenly overwhelmed by the emotions swirling within me. Good night, my queen, he replied, bringing my hand to his lips for a brief kiss before releasing it and turning away. I entered my chambers, dismissing the attendants who waited to help me prepare for bed. Alone, I shed the ceremonial robes and washed the dried blood from my shoulder, examining the bite mark Irina had left. It was already healing, our werewolf physiology at work. As I dressed in a simple nightgown, my eyes fell on the door hidden behind the tapestry, the door to Darius's chambers that had remained locked since his mother's death. Until you invite me to open it, he had said. A choice, when he could have demanded his rights as my mate. I moved to the tapestry, pushing it aside to reveal the door. My hand hesitated on the ancient lock, then turned it with a decisive click. I did not open the door, not yet, but the sound of the lock turning echoed in the quiet room like a promise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adjustments as I learned to navigate life as Queen of Shadow Crest. There would be those like Irina who resented my position, others who would test my resolve or question my decisions. But tonight, I had proven myself worthy of the title Darius had bestowed upon me. I had fought for my place and won it through my own abilities. For the first time since being rejected at my original wedding ceremony, I felt a sense of belonging, of purpose. The path ahead was uncertain. The relationship between Darius and me still tentative and new. Yet as I slipped into bed, a strange peace settled over me. I had been claimed by the Alpha King. Yes, but tonight, I had claimed something for myself as well. My place, my strength, my future, and perhaps someday, the heart of the man who had seen my worth when no one else had. I touched the silver bracelet on my wrist, the symbol of strength he had given me, and smiled into the darkness. The girl who had been rejected was gone, transformed as surely as we transformed from human to wolf and back again. In her place stood a queen, not by birth or bloodline, but by her own merit, the Alpha Queen of Shadow Crest. If you enjoyed this story, A like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.